All right, hello everybody. Welcome back to not only episode 4 of Plays Well with Others, but also a very special episode. So it's special in part because we're joined by a special guest, but also this is our first what I'm considering a feature episode. We're taking a little bit of a detour from our typical platform, our typical content style, and we're gonna talk about some fun stuff. But to get us kicked off, as always, I'm Andrew Moore. I'm joined by my illustrious co-host, Jess Agnew. And we have with us today a wonderful engineer, a very strong developer, and potentially budding rap artist. We have Travis Sims, a.k.a. T-Money. Travis, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
I don't have
anything
else to add to that, except So I am some solution engineering lead for evolv Consulting. So I've been in the business for about a decade at this point, doing work across multiple languages, whether it be .NET, PHP, Java, Python, a little bit of everything, both back end, front end. Most of my experience has probably been in the Microsoft tech stack, but worked a lot in both finance and healthcare industries. And so that's a little bit about me. I mean, you said it best.
So will you be rapping for us today?
I tend to start off strong.
Nah, I don't know
Just
if I'm
checking.
ready for that.
It's a feature
I don't
episode,
have a beat,
so.
You can't leak the new single.
Exactly.
Is what it is.
So
That's fair.
So,
I got to talk to the label.
Right.
Got to make sure it's a lot of tape to go through.
It's copyright concerns.
I mean, it's just ChatGPT created lyrics.
So as promised,
Right. Yeah.
yes. So as promised, special episode today, and I'll explain a little bit of why we're doing this special episode, even though it's a few days late. So as of the time of this taping, this last weekend was April Fool's Day, and Jess had the entertaining idea to talk about why developers and technologists in general, while we are very scientifically minded people, tend to be very superstitious. And I'm going to pause for you to hum the tune that I know you're thinking of, because I'm not going to get copyright strike on the 4th episode. But go ahead, hum that to yourself. Just pretend that it's being piped in right here. Get the vibe. Got it. So developers tend to be a superstitious bunch, and I wanted to share some of our experiences, some of our idiosyncrasies, shall we say, that we've encountered over the years, and generally just kind of have fun with the concept that superstition is alive and well, even in very engineering heavy environments.
I mean,
so I kind of wanted to kick us off.
I was going to say, even as a project manager or as a
ahead.
product owner, code's basically magic. So I regard it with awe and respect and a healthy amount of fear. So the superstition thing just plugs right in. It just plugs right in.
Yeah, for sure. And at the last job, the last gig, we had a certain release manager that really played into the superstition. And so when I'm referring to superstition, I'll give you an example. When we were at the office on release day, if anyone said anything that even sounded remotely like, this release is going to go perfectly, this is going to be wonderful, even to the point of saying, I made plans to go to dinner with my family at 7 o'clock, you have to knock on wood. So this person had a block of wood at her desk, and I took it a step further, and I'm going to go ahead and promise future editing Andrew is going to do something for you here, but I'm going to drop a photo. I made a wooden plaque that had some text carved into it, and it was all shellacked up. Very nice, but said release quality, made out of nice red oak hardwood, locally sustainable. you know, and that became part of the lore of our release cycle. And so that's not all of it. And I know, Travis, you've got some doozies that you wanted to share too. So I'm really curious to see what kind of crazy superstitions you've either participated in, exacerbated, or concocted,
or which ones you can convince the audience you do.
Yes. Okay. So yeah, I mean, for starters, like I think it's to say that yeah, like I'm not superstitious, but as Michael Scott says in The Office, I'm just a little stitious. So whenever you talk about having that wooden piece of wood to knock on, I got one right here on my desk, which started out as a little logic puzzle, but it quickly turned into making sure releases go well. Because like you say, like how many times have someone said, like, oh, this is gonna be a walk in the park, this is gonna be easy, and then everything blows up and causes issues. So I think, which is even more scary the more reliant we are like on the cloud. So it's a lot of things that are outside of our control. I've had issues before where you'd say something like that, and then suddenly Azure DevOps has an outage, or GitHub may have an outage, and suddenly you had all your code up there you can't deploy. I think that's happened to me twice in my career. And some other ones that I know either I've seen in the past or we do on my team currently is we definitely always we make sure we don't ever say something's going to be easy, or if we do, we always make sure to pad the ticket time, so that way, for those unforeseen consequences that always pop up. I think another one that tried to do is never deploy on Fridays, because
yes,
it just knows the code knows that it's a weekend. And the code knows that it's going to be alone for 72 hours. So obviously it's going to try and keep everyone around a little bit longer. Yeah. One I'm trying to get started is that when you do a release, make sure you release at 11:11, because if you make a wish during the deployment, then your entire backlog gets cleared out and everything just works.
I've heard that. I've heard that before. I've never tried it personally, but yeah. Product managers everywhere cringe.
I think that's legit, especially with CI/CD pipelines. That's the level of comfort that we strive to deliver as engineers. We just want to make sure that the product manager's on their toes. They can't be comfortably in their bed without having a little bit of anxiety while we're deploying things.
Exactly.
Right?
Oh yeah.
Okay, so oddly, my degree is actually in anthropology. And so speaking from that perspective, I mean, humans throughout all eras and in all technology levels have created these rituals and beliefs to create this illusion that we can control something out of our control. And I just find exactly what you said, Travis, earlier. One of the main reasons that I think that this superstitious subculture has been generated within technology is so much of it, as it becomes more and more complex and as it becomes more and more in the cloud, there's more and more that we, A, not everybody understands every facet of, and B, is 100% out of our control. So, you press the button on your side and you're just like, I have to leave it to fate now. Like, there's just only so much you can do.
It's a lot of prayer of the Serenity Prayer every day.
It was really fun going into
accept the things I cannot change, and
so it's like, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference.
And something about Bill Gates and his magic castle of wizards.
Yeah, I think that's legit for sure.
I do like what you brought up, Jess. The idea, and I'm gonna go down the serious path for a second, because that was interesting. So maybe there is a certain degree of coping that we have to do as technologists to protect ourselves from the things that we can't
100%.
control, because we're used to being in control, because we we coded something out of nowhere, out of nothing, and brought it into existence, and now here we are releasing it into the wild to hopefully not delete all of our data and hopefully not send emails to everyone in our CRM with our testing language in it. And I don't know where that came from. That's never happened before.
Of course
How many
not.
times has a dev said, well, it worked on my local? But that unknown factor of the new environment that you're going into is always a little scary.
Oh, yeah.
Well, right. And that's the idea behind DevOps is you want to make sure that all of your environments are completely different and built manually over 20 years. So if anybody's actually listening to that, that is not
every single person listening just cringed,
it's
like
not.
jerk cringed because of how, no, don't do that.
Well, I mean, dev comes first in DevOps, so therefore it's all about the dev experience. Forget about ops.
Yeah, so it's opposite day here on the podcast.
Right. I don't mean that at all.
Following that rabbit trail.
But Travis, I'm very curious.
We did have a counterculture at another company that we worked at.
I'm on a delay again. Sorry, guys.
Yeah, so we did have a counterculture at another office we worked at that was, it's like 12
worse
seconds.
than last time, and I rebooted this time.
So we're gonna carry on. It's you didn't say your prayers apparently. Yes, you're not living right.
Your internet should be restored.
So there we go. And the benefit here is I get to make the joke and then I get to watch it land, which is kind of nice. Gives me a nice little delay and also a nice little delay to edit on later. That'll be delightful. But so we had a nice little counterculture at another office where we were talking about DevOps, and it was kind of one of those hand-wavy, we want to be DevOps situations, and it became a dev versus ops kind of environment, which was not ideal, but what it led to was multiple competing chat clients or chat channels that there was DevOps, and then there was Ops Dev. So if you wanted to pick how you wanted to do DevOps that day, you joined one or the other.
I love that.
And so, Jess, I'm going to kick it back over to you in roughly the 10 seconds it takes for this message to get there. But I want to hear more about the anthropological approach to superstition and how that makes this podcast more like Aaron Mahnke's lore. And I'll play some spooky music.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. So it's funny that you say that because I really was trying to think through what are the positives to being to having this like superstitious culture. And in most cultures there's going to be positives and negatives, right? And it's always when you take it too far that you start getting into the negatives, when you start going too hard on the superstition to exclude common sense and scientific evidence, etc. So the positives that is true across human history, that's also true in this like subculture of technology, is it creates a positive attitude when you go into one of these releases. You've already, you've done the pre-work, and now you've done your superstitious things, you've knocked on the wood, you've done the things. So everyone comes in with like this positive attitude of, oh, okay, this is going to go well. But nobody says that out loud, ever. But the second thing I think is it can generate community between the teams because you have this inside joke, right? Like this thing that everybody knows about. And it's also fun for new hires to get inducted into the inside joke that first time around because it's quick and easy to explain. So it's not an elaborate inside joke, but it's just this fun thing that you and this team bond together doing. And the other one that I think is true again throughout human history is it reduces anxiety because you do what you can, but then it's in the hands of a higher power after you walk into the room. It's no longer up to just me of whether or not this is going to work. And I think those things translate really well into this microcosm of this technological environment that we're in, where we're all trying to, do the best that we can, but we have to accept that some things are out of our control.
So then, safe to say that that's going to be a promo slot, just for the record. But safe to say, we can do everything we can do as technologists, as product owners, product managers, project managers. We have to prepare as best we can for anything, and then from there we rely on partially on our technology and our process that we've built, and then we trust God, because that's about all we got at that point.
And you said the key there, right? Like, you can't walk into the room and just be like, well, it's in the hands of luck. No, you have to do your due diligence first. You have to test. You have to, go through the results and make sure you comb through everything with a fine-tooth comb and have the hard conversations if things aren't ready. But once you step into the room, if you've done all of that pre-work, then it's in the hands of the higher powers at that point. You're pressing a button and you're just watching. It's a show for you.
Oh yeah, like as long as you get like your backups and maybe a backup of a backup, in case things go wrong. Like you're good to go. Because I can't because of anything that could go wrong. It's like you kind of look to see like in case I guess enough times of it happening, you start thinking like, okay, if this service goes down, do we have a good rollback strategy? So that way, you have that, then worst that can happen is you roll back.
Exactly. So I'm curious, have you had any situations, Travis, where it's like been incredibly tense when you've walked in and like that thing has comforted you of like, okay, well, it's up to someone else now?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember the exact project it's been, but I've had a couple where usually if it's like big releases or if it's maybe like a huge feature that's coming down the pipeline that we want to release, and we want to make sure that one, like you said, we do our due diligence, we do our, it's fun to do these superstition, traditions to help out, but at the end of the day, you need to, make sure that you have all your ducks in a row, and if that doesn't, if anything happens, you want to make sure you have a proper rollback strategy, whether that's for your code, for your database. You want to make sure that it's also tested beforehand, so you don't find out the day of that, oops, the rollback doesn't work, and now you're in this, best way to put it, like, things hit the fan. So it's good to have that. Trying to keep it clean for the podcast. So it's
yes, there's a checkbox I have to hit if anyone swears. So everyone listening to this knows what he wanted to say.
But yeah, I've definitely had those situations, and that's the best way to approach it. Because once you do all that, you're like, what's going to happen? Either it's going to release, or we have to do it another day. If everything's good to go, it takes a lot of the pressure, a lot of the anxiety out, and it helps the team to not freak out as well, because it's one of those, like, it's contagious, whether you're excited or happy or positive or just negative. Like, that's a very contagious feeling through the team, and if you start to worry, then the team's going to start to worry. A lot of the times they start looking up to their team leads to make sure everything's good to go.
I've done a very similar thing, and I can see both sides of the equation, because we've had releases that we've had a high degree of confidence in. It's going to be fine. Everything's going to be great, and then it isn't. And the thing that we didn't define was, one, what's our rollback strategy, like you said, but then two, what triggers the decision to roll back. And those are the ones where you wind up at 3 a.m. trying to figure out what the heck is wrong with this thing, because you didn't know when you were going to pop
or
smoke.
You're trying to find phone numbers for VPs at 3 a.m. to get approval to roll back because you didn't think to get that prior. Not that I've ever done that.
On the other side of that, we've had releases that we knew were going to go terribly. They're just going to be awful, but they have to be done for whatever reason, what regulation change, what have you. And in those cases, I don't think, and I've I've not met anybody that can do it well enough, but I don't think you can polish that up enough so that the team doesn't recognize that this is going to be a dumpster fire. Like you just have to lean into it. And we had one recently where there was a product upgrade. We were upgrading through multiple major versions, and we weren't able to test something like 50% of the feature sets in the lower environment. So like, it has to go. It needs to go to production because we're out of time and materials money. We're out of budget. We're out of time, whatever. And from my seat, it was almost like, well, we have identified all of the risks. We have them written down. There's a lot of them. We know how to test those once it's in production. So we're just going to duck under our desks, hit the button, see if we hear a rumble. And it went fine. It went perfectly, just for the record. But it's the other side of the superstition coin. On one hand, it's like, well, we think it's going to be perfect, but we've done our due diligence. On the other side, I don't have any more due diligence that I can do. I have no faith in it, but it's still got to go. So here's
like
looking at you,
Schrodinger's
kid.
deployment. It's both working and not working at the same time. I know I just butchered saying
I
that.
love that.
I think I've worked on some of those applications.
That's awesome. So at the previous company, we had
The bug exists until you observe it.
I love it. At a previous company, we had this process where we would do overnight releases once a month on Saturdays because we were fully on-prem and we just didn't have that capability of doing things without downtime. So to preserve our customers, experience, we would do it once a month on the weekend, overnight, so that nobody was impacted except for us lovely people who had to be a part of it. And I had the joy of being the leader on those calls in terms of like putting together the run book, making sure everybody had done their job, calling people by name to make sure they told me when they finished their step, all that fun stuff that I'm sure many of you have had the pleasure of doing. And it's funny because now that I've left the company and I haven't done this for over a year, I look back and I do have honestly some fond memories of those times, which is funny because you wouldn't expect that I would because they're all-nighters and they're exhausting and they're incredibly stressful. But this superstition thing is one of those things that I kind of fondly remember about those where I would say, this is going really well at 2 a.m. and somebody would go, how dare you go outside, turn in a circle and spit 3 times. And it's just such a fun little like joke and lighthearted moment. And you take these like really intense experiences and you bond with the people when you go into them with this kind of fun thing that you're bringing to the table. It makes it an experience that becomes joyful and full of laughter rather than something that is just beyond stressful and exhausting.
Definitely. I think one thing that also, an inadvertent side effect of that, is that it also helps, your team, in a way it calls out things to look for. You jokingly do the superstitious thing, but it also has you thinking, okay, like, they've said that over this one feature, maybe we should double check to make sure that's good to go. Or, I should probably check our rollback strategy. And it's helpful for, it's fun for newcomers on the team to partake in that, but it also kind of helps them think like, okay, these are maybe things I need to check on before deployment. And, you kind of go from there.
I didn't even think of it that way. That's a really good point. It kind of has this side benefit of helping train people in and helping them recognize the areas that they need to be cautious on. That's a really good point.
Yeah, we had to bring in a priest for this particular feature, so the next time anyone touches anything near it, do the same.
I mean, we all have seen...
You walk outside, turn around 3 times, and spit.
We've all seen that one server. If you have anything on-prem, you've got that one server that has one thing running on it still that you just haven't been able to deprecate because that one really important person uses it. And you're terrified of turning it off because nobody's rebooted it in like 2 years. And if you turn it off, it might not come back on. Those are the moments where you go, okay, take the wheel. Someone else has to handle this because I have no control here. It's going to come back or it's not.
Yeah, those are great. When I've experienced most of them. When you walk into the IDF or the data center and you hear the ominous clicking noises. Somebody didn't bless this particular maintenance activity, and now we are up a creek.
Guys, who contaminated the holy water? Who did it?
But so...
Sorry, I needed to make coffee.
So we
We're
are
out of water.
Oh, gross.
The coffee maker.
I'm going to resist the urge to make the joke that I want to make there, but we'll follow
In my
up with
opinion,
that one
coffee
offline.
is holy water, so I don't know.
There's something there about a blessing from a Colombian priest.
Exactly.
And I think you can do that. So we're coming up on the end of our time. We are almost got the third co-host. I think she's dreaming under the desk. But so we're coming up on the end of the time, and we were talking offline ahead of the call that I still haven't found a consistent outro. And I maybe that's not important, but I think it is. I like it, and it makes me happy. But because it's 2023 and all of our personalities are completely driven by ChatGPT now, I think we're going to let the Terminator take this one and let Travis ask the almighty ChatGPT how we close out this podcast.
I'm honored. Okay, so I've gone ahead and I asked it, hey, I'm hosting a technology-based podcast about different departments working well together. Can you give me a great outro to sign off? But I wasn't too satisfied with its response, so I asked, can you turn it into a pun? Therefore, that's all for today's episode, folks. Remember, when it comes to departments working together in a tech world, it's all about finding the right formula. So keep mixing it up, stay plugged in, and don't forget to charge forward towards success. We'll be back soon with more electrifying insights, so until then, keep on innovating, which isn't really punny now that I read it out loud, but that's, give it time. Once GPT-4 is released, maybe we'll
There's
come
formula
back to this.
and mixing it up. There's something in there that's close to a pun.
I don't know. I feel
Yeah.
energized. I'm all about it. I'm gonna need you to drop the text in the chat, and
We'll play with it.
We'll
We'll
workshop that one a little bit, but maybe that one will be
There we
back.
go. Perfect.
All right. Well, this has been Plays Well with Others, episode 4. As always, Andrew Moore, Jess Agnew. Thanks for joining.